Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Friday, August 1st, 2025, episode 453, and we're going to talk about several topics, but really it's sort of try to pick out some of the headlining news of the day and try to tie it all together with a underlying principle. So anyway, one of the videos that came up in my memories was I think it was John Stossel video where it was released 6 years ago, and it was a who spends more kind of video, and it was a run up to the 2020 election, and it examined the Democratic candidates as well as Donald Trump to try to figure out who was proposing the most amount of spending. And it was kind of ridiculous where everyone tries to one up each other. And it was pretty interesting the amounts that they were saying that they should spend. And so they were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars at some point. And I thought, oh, how low those amounts are in compared to what we're throwing around these days, right? These days it has to be billions of dollars. And 6 years ago, they were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And towards the end, I think they mentioned that the debt of the country at the time was $22 trillion, which of course is nothing compared to what we're looking at today, which is pretty much nearly $37 trillion. Officially, I think it's a lot higher than that actually, but officially that's what they're reporting. I think my debt badge needs to be updated. Anyway, so I thought that was kind of interesting. 6 years ago, we were talking about 22 trillion, and now we're looking at what, 37, $38 trillion of debt in just 6 years. It's phenomenal, really. Then there's the Sydney Sweeney craze, and I got confused with her and the Robbie girl, the girl who was in the Barbie movie, I guess. Uh, Say what you will, but I've never seen Sydney Sweeney in a TV show or a movie. I looked up her on IMDb, and I didn't see any of the things that she was in. That's probably why I don't know who she is. I mean, I've seen her face, but I have no idea who she is. And she was part of the American Eagle uh, advertisement campaign, advertising jeans. And I thought that the slogan was kind of cute, right? Like that she has good genes, right? Well, I'm sure it wasn't the first time that that was used, right? I'm almost, I don't know. It's been a long time. I don't really follow advertising that much, but I think it's, you know, other people have done it, I'm sure gene companies, because of the whole, uh, because it's a homonym of genes, Genes. But anyway, but people decided to freak out this time. And then I saw a meme that juxtapositioned Colbert's cancellation with American Eagle's stock price rise. So Colbert was losing, what is it, CBS 40, $50 million a year. And in just a matter of hours, Sydney Sweeney managed to get the stock price of American Eagle up 10 or 15%, which is like $100 million or something like that, something ridiculous. But when you see this, it's kind of it's interesting, right? It's a study now that we're allowed to have a little bit more of a conversation. On the one side, you have the people who are complaining are the people who are all about body positivity, where obesity and extreme, morbid obesity is beautiful, and people like Sydney Sweeney is disgusting, right? So you have this kind of thing, and then you have a lot of people who think that Sydney Sweeney is really attractive, and excuse me, the other way. I already said that. Oh no, think that she's attractive and then are kind of turned off by the body positivity people. Um, So I thought it was kind of interesting. Now, I always had a problem with the whole body positivity thing because the body is one thing, but health is something else, right? So you can be healthy, right, and not necessarily look a certain way. You can look a certain way and not necessarily be healthy. So, it's a much more complicated conversation that we need to have, which was not allowed to be had because of all of this body positivity stuff. And if you don't go along with it, you're a hater, etc. So, I thought it was kind of that during the whole Corona thing, that the whole body positivity movement should have died, right? Because if you look at the whole comorbidity, that is, other health problems that a person may have when they come down with the cervasis. And one of the problems, or one of the things that exasperated or exacerbated, that is made worse, your symptoms and your likelihood of recovery of the cervasis was how heavy you were, right? What was how morbidly obese you were. And I kept hearing that people who are really, really obese did not have a good survival rate. So, okay, so you're really positive about your body, but as a result, your survival probability of certain diseases go way, way down. You should probably acknowledge that. That should have been part of the calculus, right? So I wonder what the overall mortality rate was with the obese. I'm sure it was not 100%, obviously, but I think it was a lot higher as compared to people who are not categorized as obese. And so basically, the whole cervasis phenomena is the reckoning, right? It allows people to see, oh, okay, so who actually is more in the right in terms of health, right? Because I think I've heard body positivity people say that it has nothing to do with health. You can be morbidly obese and it doesn't matter. You can eat whatever you want, whatever. Now, see, as the subjective professor, I totally get it. I mean, there are people who have fetishes, right? So there's the Rubenesque fetish, right? So those paintings of really overweight women, and maybe they're not overweight. I don't know. But if we go by traditional American health standards that I grew up with, then yeah, they're obese. But some people really they're attracted, they get turned on by that that kind of body shape. And then, so, okay, so then if you want to uplift that type of body shape, that kind of lifestyle, which will give you that body shape, okay, so you want people to respect you, but then to turn around and throw shade on anything and everything else, well, that's just straight up hypocrisy, right? Especially those women who record themselves saying, "Oh, I'm triggered from all the stuff that I had to struggle with when I was a younger person." Okay, whatever, right? So what? And that gives you the justification and the right to then terrorize other people? No, I don't think so, right? Plus, you put on top of it the fact that Sydney Sweeney is, I think she's white, right? And she's a woman. So where are the feminists, right? At least second wave feminists, right? And talk about anti-whiteness is always a juicy issue. It's always about racialization. But if the people who were all into body positivity really believed the stuff that they were saying, then they would have seen Sydney Sweeney and said, "You go, girl, right? You make it work." But that's not what we see. So it tells me that there's something else going on, right? It's not about body positivity. It's about something else, right? And that I don't care to look into, but someone else can decide to look into if they can find a professor who will preside over a research project like that. But the way that scholarship is going these days and the way that universities are dropping like flies and laying off faculty and cutting back on programs, I don't think that would be a particularly viable subject. I mean, it's something you could probably research on a weekend. There's no need to go to grad school to try to study it, right? Unless, of course, you tie it to larger phenomena that we see in society. Anyway, so the main topic of the day is two videos I saw with Vince Lanci. Uh, First video was a conversation he had with Peter Grandich. Oh, I didn't write down the title of that uh, conversation, but if you just type in Peter Grandich and Vince Lanci, it'll pop right up. I think it's on Peter Grandich's. Oh, it's on the podcast of Peter Grandich. Okay. And in that conversation was interesting. And what a lot of people are missing is that Trump is talking all these trade deals, how he's like, look what I'm doing. We got all these wins. And but what have you done? What have you actually put into action beyond the talk? And there's not much, right? So Vince Lanci thought that, oh, if something doesn't happen in the way that they desire, Trump will just simply say, oh, but we already broke ground on three new factories, four new refineries, and whatever, whatever, but nothing. There's nothing being done. And that's kind of what Peter Schiff was saying. That kind of business adventure to start the construction of a factory or the construction of a refinery, that is a long-term investment, right? Like I mentioned it before that to have a mine, like a silver mine, go from, oh, we found one and now let's start digging, right? That's 20 years, right? From discovery to actually starting to dig stuff out of the ground. And that 20-year turnaround is massively expensive. There's hundreds of millions of dollars that have to be spent on research, compliance, environmental studies, water purity studies, all that stuff, which is why it takes 20 years and hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, if that's what it takes to start a mine, maybe not as long, but just as expensive, a factory or a refinery, right? These things are not just things you can say, oh, Trump said that we're going to do it now. Okay, let's start it, right? Well, let's just say it takes 10 years to go from hiring an architect to draw up designs and actually starting to produce something. In that time period of 10 years, the president has changed. And so who's to say the new president doesn't start passing all these executive orders and then puts the kibosh on all of those new factories and refineries, right? Just like Obama did. Obama shut down all the lead refineries or whatever you would call them, lead factories, lead production places, right? He shut them all down. And so if you can do that with the stroke of a pen, why would you risk hundreds of millions of dollars on a project which might get killed in a couple of years, especially if Trump loses, the Republicans lose control of the House and the Senate in the midterm elections, then what then? And so you see, there's no follow-up. It's all talk. And because it's all talk, what's the United States actually doing? Just creating a lot of bad blood, bad feelings, mistrust, a series of broken promises. You got someone who's bullying you, threatening you, being obnoxious and just simply rude and totally looking down on you and all of your people like you're nothing because they're Americans, right? It's just this weird arrogant North American attitude that I've seen and talked about pretty much most of my life. And no one in America can see it, right? That's what's so crazy. Most of the Christians who I talk to never see it, right? Because either they're part of it or they want to become part of it, right? They never see it. But then those of us who want to see a bigger picture, you're like, well, clearly there's an assumption of neutrality and superiority on your part, and they never see it, right? So there's just a lot of talk. There's no concern for the practical side of things, no thought of the details. And Trump seems to be like that, where he just takes a headline, like a New York Times headline, and then goes with that. And all of his information, his sources are feeding him a lot of bad information, right? Like the deaths, the number of deaths in the Ukraine, how many Russian soldiers are dead, how many people are starving to death in Gaza. None of there's no sign of sort of subtlety and nuance in Trump. It's just, and I'll say it again, just so I can turn around a couple months from now and say, see, I told you so. But I do think that Trump is suffering from some sort of mental decline. Anyone who has an older parent, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like my father, he like up until the day we had to take him to the hospital, he was walking 3 miles a day, right? He was strong as an ox, but mentally speaking, he wasn't what he used to be. We used to call him the human GPS when we were younger. He never got lost, okay? And then I had to take his car away because he kept getting lost, right? He would drive for hours, and I'd get a phone call in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's in a shopping mall like two towns over. How did he get there? So it's that thing where on one level he looks completely functional, but on another level, yeah, he's not who he used to be. Okay. So Trump, I think a lot of people that are close to him know this and they're taking advantage of it. The deep state, they're taking advantage of it. And the rest of us, some of us are haters at Trump TDS, positive, TDS negative, Trump derangement syndrome in the positive, and Trump derangement syndrome of the negative variety. And then there's the rest of us, right? Who are just like, what the heck is going on? Now, in China, they can build a factory. Like they can build, I remember during the lockdowns, Cervaceous lockdowns, they built what is it, a 6,000 bed hospital in a week. It took them 7 days to build a 6,000 bed hospital, right? How long would that take for Americans to do? A 6,000 bed hospital, fully ready to go, functional, right? I mean, you can't, in America, you can't even have tents for homeless people in 10 years. You can't do it, right? But China, they can do that. So I would imagine building a factory in a matter of a few months at the most is totally doable. But in the United States, I think it's next to impossible. It would never happen. And so basically, the United States has been playing the wrong game. Our government is representing this country as if we can do anything. And no, we can't. We can't do anything. We're far from being able to do any of that stuff. And so to be able to shake a stick at any country is just absolutely ludicrous. But the problem is, of course, that America is shaking a nuclear stick. We have 6,000 nuclear warheads or something like that. And that's what makes this country so dangerous. We have morons in charge, and we're sitting on a powder keg. And that pretty much is the only thing we have left, right? Is we are a crazy country that has nukes. But there it is. And then let's see, today's episode of Arcadia Economics. Again, it was Vince Lancy. He had the title of the video is Gold and Silver Rebound After Weak Labor Report. And what was the first part of the video was his normal silver report, silver and gold report. And then he concluded the video, but then right afterwards he read I think a paper or an article that he had written. And he confirmed a lot of the things that I was already suspecting, right? Which is basically that the asset bubbles, the bubbles that we are seeing, and then therefore the boom and bust cycle that we have to live through. It's not, unintended consequences. It's not this sort of, oh, people don't understand economics, so they print all this money and they create all these asset bubbles and then it pops and then we have all this chaos. It's a business plan, right? So basically, the rest of us, we see boom and bust and we're like, hey, what's going on? Government should do more. But there are certain people who are pulling all the strings. And I mentioned this before when I talked about Biden, because clearly he wasn't running the country. someone, whoever's running the country, or if not a large part of the world, they are using the boom bust cycle as a business plan. That is how they make their money. This is probably why BRICS is so hated, because I see it as, he didn't say this, but maybe he did imply it, but it's a way out of this uh, doom loop, as one might say, right? They can see the game that's being played, the boom bust cycle, and so they're trying to get out by exiting the dollar. That's not to say that they'll be successful in leaving the clutches of, whoever is pulling all this stuff, but it's an attempt, at least the way that I see it right now, unless it gets co-opted by something else. In fact, I'll just say it, I think that the reason why China and Russia are so hated, and why Trump and Biden and whoever else you want to think of, it hates them so much, is because they refuse to participate, and they don't participate in this sort of boom bust cycle. Like I already mentioned before, that people hate Putin. They say, oh, he's such a bad guy. Well, maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know. I just don't know. But I suspect, and I think I'm 90% sure that a lot of the people that he killed in Russia were Western operatives, right? They were people who were working either at the behest of the West, they were paid by the West, they're somehow bribed to support Western political agenda, and that's who Trump killed. Excuse me, Putin got rid of. And so, of course, everyone in the West is going to be outraged, like, oh, how dare Putin? He's such an evil guy. But from the Russian perspective, he did a great thing. He's a hero, right? And so that's kind of something that we should probably keep in mind. But I think that's why Trump and so many people are going hard against the BRICS, and why everyone's trying to talk them down, because they're trying to get out of this boom bust cycle thing. And so basically, it is their business plan. The policies that are enacted in the West are policies to push the average Joe like you and me into the bubble. And then when it pops, those in power are protected, right? Like the 2008 mortgage crisis bailout, while the little guy is left holding the bag. They lose their house, they lose all their savings, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so we are basically being used to enrich everybody else. And he talks about measuring everything in terms of gold and silver, gold in particular, right? That with all of this AI, with all of this new tech, what is the value of all of that effort as compared to gold? And right now, we're not keeping up. In other words, that's why gold price keeps going up, because all of the effort and everything that is being done here in the United States is falling behind the price of gold, which basically is saying that all of the stuff that we're seeing, for whatever its value, it is not worth as much as the stuff that we used to do. And so, in other words, we are regressing as a society. At least that's the way I understand him, what he's saying. So, as people and his conclusion is, as people who are in the storm, I'm sorry, I'm mixing a lot of my own interpretation with what he actually said. You should go listen to the video. But the way I hear him saying, his conclusion is that since we're in the storm, try to figure out what will be worth something after all of the dust settles, after the bubbles pop. And I think he is putting his some of his marbles on AI and commodities. Okay. So I thought it was extremely thoughtful. It was extremely philosophical, and it was very much big picture. And I've been trying to talk about big picture. I'm sorry it's going a little bit long, but the topic is kind of big. Maybe I shouldn't have talked about Sydney Sweeney, but anyway, and it's the narrow, wide subjectivity thing. Now, if your subjectivity, your perspective is too wide, right? You have to sort of narrow it down. But what are the parameters that you are going to use to narrow your scope, narrow your vision of society? Well, you can do that, but then you got to go back wide again. Go wide and then zero in on something, then zoom out again. And then you keep repeating this process to try to figure out what's going on in the world. right? It's going from the big picture back to your life, back to the big picture, back to your life. And when you do this, zoom in and out, you realize that everyone, nearly everyone, is going to have a different outlook on life, and the choices that they want to make and the reason why they want to make it should be different. Back in episode 339, I talked about honest weights and scales, and I tried to entertain the idea, I think I did anyway. What if you could control all the money? Mario 60, Maneko 64, likes this quote: "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." And it's by a Rothschild, right? So basically, the fact that we have government is only it's a mirage, it's an illusion. The people who are really controlling not only a country but the world is the people who control money, the money supply. Now imagine if you had all the money in the world, right? You control it through the banks. Can you comprehend that level of life? I mean, you can literally buy everything, okay? But then what, right? And so basically, all of their effort is how do you control everybody? How do you control the reactions of the little people, right? And then do the little people even know you exist, right? Because once we're going into conspiracy theory territory here, right? But it is interesting, right? How this patterns keep happening over and over again. The population keeps getting dumber and dumber, more and more narrow-minded, more and more partisan, tribal, nationalistic. Use whatever adjective you want. And all of those adjectives, though, are a narrow focus. Give me a big picture, will you? Right? And so when you have control of all of the money, you can pretty much do anything that you want. You control the perception of right and wrong, of morality, of value. And Vince Lance was getting into this aspect of value. So we all need a metric or a way to what do you call it? A reliable ruler through which we can work all of this out, right and wrong, morality and value. And unless and until we do, it's everything is just simply subjective. It's just an opinion, right? And it comes back to another theme that I've been talking about a lot, which is that desire to be right or to be told what is right, right? And it's that tension between absolute and subjectivity, right? Relative and absolute. So people want to know what the absolute is, so then now they know what they're supposed to do. Tell me what the truth is, and now I know what to do. And I think I annoy a lot of people because I keep pushing this whole everything is subjective thing, right? Way of thinking. But unless we have perfect knowledge, um, you know, unless you have perfect knowledge, everything is going to be simply subjective. Everything is just simply a matter of opinion. Now, we might get something right in part. It's a mistake to think that it's absolutely always going to be true, right? So to declare something as absolute introduces moral hazards, right? It's a cornerstone that a lot of people are going to use to make all these decisions, their outlook on life, their faith, even. This is why I annoy a lot of Christians too, because they want to say, no, 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 but this is absolutely true. And I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe. But when you take that position, everybody else who has the same faith is wrong. That's a, you know, I do have personal opinions, and this is how I'm structuring my life and everything, but I'm not going to take that step and say everyone else is absolutely wrong. To be honest, I don't know other people's situations enough or care enough to know to be able to say it's wrong. If it works for you, it works for you. Okay. It probably doesn't work for me. This is why I have a different way of looking at things. So to say that everything is subjective undermines the security, the confidence, maybe even arrogance, shall we say, that comes along with it. It's like, I know the truth. And see, you can't say anything that will bother me because I know the truth. And what that essentially does is it puts up walls to prevent more learning, right? And I keep saying that I have absolutes in my life, but I know that they're also subject to change. I get a lot of things wrong, but I always keep in mind that there's a bigger picture. So I'm totally willing to be told I'm wrong, but you just got to prove it. If the value of everything we know is distorted, how reliable is our understanding of the truth, of the absolute, even our understanding of what it might be? Theologically, politically, economically, technologically, philosophically, I mean, you name it, all of this stuff. What is actually true? Well, if there's a way for you to know, like I personally believe that when I die, I get to heaven, I'll know. But since I know I'll know then, I'm not in a rush. I'm just going to do the best I can every day, moment by moment. And so we need freedom to compete with ideas more than anything else, right? Freedom is the ability to be able to exchange ideas, debate with others, discuss with others, listen to podcasts to try to find a better idea, right? And to continually grow in our understanding of ourselves, of the world, and what's going on in the world. Otherwise, we become like the masses, right? All those people out there who are tribal, who grab at straws like Marxism to get them through the day. Like, oh, I believe in equity. I believe in equality, whatever, right? You grab at these little straws and then you orient your whole life around that. It's like the whole Sydney Sweeney thing. Like, why is that a big deal? But yet people are losing their minds as a result of it. That is indicative of someone who has latched on to what they think is absolutely true, and now their whole life revolves around that. Nothing else matters. Nuclear Armageddon doesn't matter. Ukraine war doesn't matter. Genocide in Gaza doesn't matter, right? Because it doesn't compute. It does not fit in the subjectivity of looking at Sydney Sweeney. So how do I live then? Well, in contrast to this desire for absolute, I live with hope, right? Hope that I'll have a better understanding of life tomorrow than I did today. See, that's exciting. It's never boring, right? It's never boring. And you don't have that danger, or you run the lesser risk. It's a lower risk of coming off arrogant, right? Like saying, well, psh, I don't have to listen to you because I already know what's right and wrong. You don't have that problem. Now, I'll admit that in the same way that certain people, I listen to them, I know that they're nice. I know that what they're saying is cool, but they annoy me. Okay. I know I do the same thing to a lot of people. I accept that. Nevertheless, you can reject me as a person, but take the ideas and live with hope, right? Hope to learn something better tomorrow. This, and to top it all off, it undermines anyone else's ability to control someone else. And that's what we're talking about. To be free, to not be subject to anyone else, but to be fully responsible for all of the choices that we make. Anyway, so that's how I put all these different uh, random news events together, um, and how it all sort of give you an idea of how it all fits together in my mind anyway. Even though on one level they don't seem like they are related to each other, in my mind, they kind of all are, playing out of this phenomena that we're living in, which we call uh, society today. That's it. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.